My roommate kept borrowing my clothes without asking, so I sewed itchy fiberglass fabric into the armpits. Now she's threatening to sue me for assault. Let me start off by saying I'm not the petty type. I don't do drama, and I try to avoid confrontation whenever possible. But after 6 months of living with my roommate Emily, I was pushed to the edge. I moved into this apartment last September. It was the first time I'd lived with someone I hadn't known for years, but she seemed cool enough during the initial meetup. We agreed to split chores, share the kitchen, and respect each other's boundaries, including no borrowing clothes without asking. Emily even nodded and said, "That's totally fair. I'm super picky about my stuff too." That fairness lasted about 3 weeks. I started noticing little things missing. A belt. Then a scarf. Then my favorite cardigan. One day I saw her post a selfie on Instagram wearing my vintage denim jacket, the same one I had torn my closet apart looking for 2 days prior. I confronted her gently and she brushed it off with a laugh and a, "Oh, I thought you weren't wearing it anymore." I let it go the first time. I really did try to be understanding. But it kept happening. Tops, skirts, even my damn yoga pants. She always claimed it was either an accident or she thought I wouldn't mind. I started locking my bedroom door, but she picked the lock. I literally caught her doing it once and she gave me the most smug, unapologetic look. Said something like, "You're being uptight. I only borrow your stuff because you have good taste." I was speechless. I told her to stop immediately and that next time, I'd report it as theft. She just rolled her eyes. I told our landlord too, but since nothing was technically stolen permanently, they couldn't do anything. I couldn't afford to break the lease either. That's when I started thinking of other ways to get the message across. Not to hurt her, but to make borrowing my stuff not worth the trouble. I started reading online forums, petty revenge subreddits, booby trap ideas, etc. And found one post where someone mentioned how fiberglass insulation is incredibly itchy and nearly impossible to wash out of clothing fibers. That idea stuck with me for weeks. I thought about it every time I saw another of my shirts tossed carelessly in the laundry or stained from her makeup. I was sick of feeling powerless in my own space. And I'll admit it, I wanted her to be uncomfortable. So one weekend when Emily went home to visit her parents, I finally did it. I went to the hardware store and bought a pair of cheap work gloves and a square of fiberglass insulation. It was gross to handle, even with gloves on, tiny little particles that get everywhere and itch like mad if you're not careful. I cut it up into small strips and stitched them by hand into the armpits of 3 of my shirts that she had worn before without asking. I used a matching thread so it wasn't noticeable from the outside. The fabric was sewn in loosely, just enough to sit under the surface lining where it would rub directly against her skin if she wore them. Then I hung them in the shared laundry area like bait. Sure enough, 2 days after she returned, one of the shirts was gone from the line. I didn't say anything. I just waited. That night, Emily was fidgety on the couch. The next day, she was visibly red and scratching her sides through her hoodie. By the 3rd day, she had red blotches all down her underarms and sides and kept saying something in the apartment was giving her a rash. I kept my poker face and acted sympathetic. I even asked if she'd tried switching detergents. The best part? She didn't know it was only happening when she wore certain clothes. She kept rotating through outfits, and each time she picked one of the shirts I had trapped, the rash came back. A week later, she stopped touching my stuff entirely. I thought that was the end of it. Problem solved, lesson learned. I even tossed out the fiberglass shirts just to be safe and didn't think about it again. But then things took a sharp left turn. Last Thursday, I came home from work to find her waiting in the living room with this smug, cold expression. She had a folder in her hands and said she'd spoken to a lawyer. Apparently, she had figured out what caused the rash. She somehow found the fiberglass in the laundry lint trap or maybe pulled it out of a seam I missed. Either way, she told the lawyer she believed I had maliciously laced clothing with a harmful substance, and that technically it could be considered assault. She handed me a cease and desist letter and said if I didn't settle privately, she would press charges. I genuinely thought she was bluffing at first, but now I'm not so sure. At first, I laughed. Literally. I thought it was some kind of power play or scare tactic. Emily had a history of being dramatic and manipulative, so I didn't take it seriously, until I read the letter she gave me more closely. It had a real law firm header on it, contact info, and a named attorney. It wasn't just a printed-off template. It outlined what she called deliberate infliction of harm and cited some state penal codes that, under the right interpretation, could classify what I did as misdemeanor assault or reckless endangerment. It even mentioned the possibility of civil damages for skin irritation and emotional distress. Suddenly, it wasn't funny anymore. I didn't respond right away. I spent most of that night researching legal forums, trying to see if anyone had been in a similar situation. It was a gray area. There were cases where pranks using allergens or irritants were treated seriously by the courts, especially when there was proof of intent. And I couldn't lie, I had fully intended to make her uncomfortable. I just didn't think she'd ever trace it back to me or take it beyond a few itches. The more I read, the more nervous I got. If she took this all the way, even if it didn't result in a conviction, I could end up with legal fees I couldn't afford, a restraining order, or a black mark on my rental history. The next morning, I emailed the law office listed on the letter. I wanted to know if this was real or just an intimidation stunt. To my surprise, I got a reply within a few hours. They confirmed they had been retained by Emily and advised that I refrain from further contact and consider mediation. That's when the panic really hit. I had tried every non-legal route before resorting to this little trap, and now it might bite me harder than anything she ever did. I hadn't even told any of my friends yet because the whole thing was so absurd. How do you explain to someone that you might get sued for itchy armpits? What makes it worse is that Emily suddenly flipped back into being sweet and cheerful, almost smugly so. She's still living here, acting like everything's normal, but now every conversation is lined with veiled threats. Last night she said, "Hope you've been saving up. Legal stuff isn't cheap," as she poured herself wine from my bottle. I haven't touched her stuff, haven't retaliated, haven't even raised my voice. I've just been walking on eggshells, waiting for her next move. And now I'm stuck in this surreal limbo. Do I lawyer up and fight back, or try to settle just to avoid the chaos? I finally told my best friend about everything, partly because I needed someone to vent to, and partly to ask if she knew any cheap lawyers. She was horrified but also kind of impressed in a, "damn, that's some movie-level revenge," way. Still, she warned me that I might have gone too far. She sent me the number of a legal aid clinic she'd used before during a housing dispute. I called them the next day and managed to get a free consultation. The lawyer I spoke to didn't exactly say I was in the clear, but he wasn't overly alarmed either. He said it's unlikely a judge would consider it criminal assault unless there was lasting damage, but civil court. That's a different beast. He basically told me what I did was stupid. Not malicious, but definitely reckless with foreseeable harm. He asked if there was any proof of her taking my clothes without permission, and when I said no, because of course I never filmed her stealing, he kind of sighed and said that would make things murkier. He suggested I draft a written response denying liability but also offering informal mediation if she was serious about pursuing the matter. He said it might de-escalate the situation without me needing to fully lawyer up. So I wrote a response, carefully worded, and dropped it in an envelope under her door. I said I disagreed with her version of events, but I'd be willing to talk it out in mediation if she was truly pursuing legal action. I didn't apologize or admit anything, just stayed neutral. That night, she didn't say anything. The next morning, though, I noticed all her stuff had been moved out of the living room. Her keys weren't on the hook. Her toothbrush was gone. She hadn't said a word to me about moving. About an hour later, I got a text from her, you'll be hearing from my lawyer. I'm not playing games. That was it. No follow-up. She didn't block me, but she's not answering anything else either. So now I'm sitting in this half-empty apartment wondering if I just dodged a bullet or if I'm about to be in the middle of an actual lawsuit. The crazy thing is, I don't even regret doing it. I regret getting caught. Update 2. It's been 4 days since Emily moved out and sent that final text, and so far, I haven't received anything else. No certified letters. No court documents. No calls from any attorney. Just radio silence. I called the law firm again to check if they'd officially filed anything on her behalf. They confirmed she had consulted with them but hadn't initiated a case yet. The paralegal even said, off the record, that they advised her it probably wouldn't go far in court unless she had medical records or serious evidence of harm. I almost laughed. Emily's rash was annoying, sure, but it wasn't some life-altering injury. At worst, it was an uncomfortable few days with no scarring or long-term damage. Still, I didn't want to let my guard down. I cleaned out all shared spaces in the apartment, especially the laundry room, and got rid of anything that could even remotely connect me to the fiberglass. I also deep-cleaned my own clothes and made sure nothing was left behind. I even double-checked the lint trap in the dryer, just in case. Paranoia makes you thorough, I guess. But even as I scrubbed and purged, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Then yesterday, I got a visit from our landlord. He said Emily had reached out to file a complaint about a hostile living environment and mentioned sabotage with hazardous materials. I nearly choked. The landlord said he wasn't taking sides, but he had to do a walkthrough of the unit to make sure everything was safe and up to code. So now, not only do I have to worry about possible legal action, but my housing is at risk too. I let him in, he looked around, found nothing suspicious, and even commented that the place looked cleaner than usual. After he left, I sat on my bed for a long time just thinking about how this spiraled. I wanted her to stop violating my space. That's all. I never thought it would go this far. And even if she drops everything and never follows through, I still feel like I've got this ticking clock hanging over my head. She knows where I live. She knows where I work. What if she tries to trash me online or report me to HR or something even pettier? I don't know what her end game is, but I've got a bad feeling she's not done yet. Today, I got a call from our mutual friend Kelly. She's not someone I'm super close to, more like a friend of a friend who's been around for game nights and birthday dinners. I didn't even know Emily and Kelly talked one-on-one like that. But apparently they do, because Kelly started the call with, "Hey, I just wanted to warn you. Emily's telling people you tried to poison her." My stomach dropped. According to Kelly, Emily had been going around to mutual acquaintances saying I booby-trapped my clothes with dangerous chemicals in an attempt to make her sick. She told one girl we know that she thought I was trying to cause permanent skin damage or worse. I asked Kelly if anyone believed her, and she hesitated. "Some people think it's a stretch," she said, "but honestly, the way she tells it, it sounds scary. And you have to admit, fiberglass is kind of intense." I wanted to scream. Intense? She was literally stealing from me for months and no one batted an eye. But now that I found a creative way to make her stop, I'm suddenly the dangerous one. It made me feel like the villain in my own story. Kelly said she wasn't taking sides, but I could tell she thought I might have gone overboard. She advised me to get ahead of the narrative if I wanted to salvage my reputation. "Maybe tell your side of it before she turns everyone against you," she said. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I made a private Instagram story, visible only to the people in our shared circle, and laid out my side. I didn't go into the fiberglass detail, just said that Emily had been taking my belongings without permission for months. I tried to discourage it in various ways, and now she was retaliating. I kept it vague but firm. I didn't mention lawyers, didn't throw insults, just told the truth or enough of it. A few people responded privately. One girl said, "That makes sense, honestly. She used to borrow my stuff too and never return it." Another said, "She always seemed kinda entitled. Sorry you're dealing with this." That gave me some relief. Maybe people weren't buying into Emily's victim act completely. But I also got 2 replies that just said, "Yikes" and "Damn." No context. No follow-up. Just vague disapproval. It's wild how fast your social standing can tilt based on one story told the right way. And Emily? She hasn't contacted me since that last text. No lawsuit. No more legal letters. But somehow, she's doing more damage now than she ever did while living here. I really thought I could move past this, but Emily's influence keeps lingering like a bad smell in a sealed room. I went to a small birthday gathering over the weekend, nothing major, just a few of our mutual friends, and the tension was immediate. People were polite, but I could feel the shift. No one mentioned the drama outright, but the way they talked around me, avoided certain topics, or exchanged weird glances when I walked into conversations, it was enough to make me wish I hadn't shown up. Worse, I caught wind that Emily might be trying to warn people in our building about me. A neighbor I barely know mentioned in passing, "Hope you and your new roommate get along better," with this knowing look. I froze. I haven't even looked for a new roommate yet. I asked where she heard that, and she brushed it off like it was nothing, but the implication was clear. Emily's trying to control the narrative before I can clean up the fallout. It's not just awkward social encounters either. My job does quarterly background checks, routine stuff, and I've started obsessively checking my HR portal, terrified some bizarre civil complaint might pop up. So far, nothing has, but I'm jumpy. Every unknown number that calls me makes my stomach twist. I even started pre-drafting emails to HR explaining the situation, just in case, but I haven't sent anything. It feels paranoid, but I'd rather be ready than blindsided. The thing that eats at me most is that I was finally in a good place before all this started. I had stabilized financially, finally decorated the apartment the way I liked, and felt somewhat proud of how I was handling adulthood. But now I feel like I'm stuck living inside the consequences of a joke that went too far. Every little interaction feels tainted by it. And yet, there's still no actual lawsuit. No court date. Just this vague, hovering threat. Emily's living somewhere else now. I saw her post from a new apartment in a different part of town. But she clearly hasn't let go of her grudge. She even changed her bio on Instagram to some passive-aggressive quote about evil roommates who wear masks of kindness. Subtle, right? So what am I supposed to do now? Sit in this limbo indefinitely? Keep waiting for a knock on the door, a letter, a subpoena? Or do I call her bluff once and for all? Update 3. I finally hit my breaking point. I was tired of waiting, tired of jumping at shadows, tired of letting Emily live rent-free in my head. So I took a calculated risk. I messaged her. Not to apologize, not to beg, but to lay things out clearly. I wrote, "If you're serious about legal action, please proceed. But if not, I'd appreciate if you stopped slandering me. I'm not engaging further unless it's through official channels." That was it. Short, direct, professional. I didn't expect her to reply, and for a while, she didn't. But 2 days later, I got a long, furious message that started with, "You think you're the victim," and ended with a half-hearted threat about reporting me again. The tone was so unhinged and all over the place that it actually made me feel weirdly better. It was the clearest proof yet that she had nothing real to go on. Just bluster and bitterness. That night, I finally slept better than I had in weeks. But I wasn't done protecting myself. I decided to get a notarized letter from the legal aid clinic, just stating that I'd received no formal complaint and that I had responded appropriately when she threatened legal action. They told me it might help if she ever tried to build a harassment or retaliation case later. I also emailed my landlord, thanking him for the walkthrough and asking for documentation that the unit was found in good condition. covering all my bases. Then something strange happened. One of Emily's older posts on TikTok went mildly viral. Not for the fiberglass situation, thank God, but for some random skincare video. She gained a bunch of followers. And in the comments, a couple people mentioned me. Not by name, but enough to recognize the context. Is this the girl with the fiberglass roommate? LMAO, didn't she sue someone for armpit rash? I wanted to crawl out of my skin. But instead of correcting them or clarifying anything, Emily deleted the comments. Not all at once, but slowly, over the course of a few days. I saw them disappear. And something clicked. She's not going to sue me. She never planned to. Because now that she's trying to build a social media presence, she knows a lawsuit could backfire. People would dig. Screenshots would come out. Her credibility would shatter if anyone found out the real story. So now I know, she's bluffing. And I'm finally starting to move on. Update 4. This week has been quiet, eerily so, but in the best way. For the first time since this all began, I feel like I can breathe. No surprise texts, no whispered gossip from mutual friends, no landlord visits. Just silence. Peace. I've started reclaiming parts of my life that I didn't realize had been hijacked by anxiety. I'm back to sleeping through the night without checking my phone at 3 a.m. For phantom legal threats. I've gone to brunch with friends without wondering if they've heard Emily's version of things. And most importantly, I've stopped looking over my shoulder every time I step out of my apartment. After weeks of panic, I finally let myself reflect on the whole situation with a little more clarity. Yes, what I did was petty. Yes, it probably wasn't the most mature solution. But do I regret it? Honestly, no. Emily had zero respect for boundaries, treated my things like her personal inventory, and acted like I was the problem when I asked her to stop. All I did was give her a reason to respect what I had already asked nicely about a dozen times before. Would I handle it the same way now, knowing what I know? Maybe not. But back then, I was out of patience and out of options. I've also started casually looking for a new roommate, not because I'm desperate for one, but because I think I'm finally ready to let someone else into this space without feeling territorial or defensive. I've rewritten the roommate ad like 10 times though. I keep catching myself wanting to add, must not steal clothes or lie about lawsuits, but I don't want to scare off decent people who have nothing to do with this chaos. I'll probably end up just renting month to month until I feel completely secure. Strangely enough, I heard Emily might be trying to move out of town. One of her friends, a quieter one who actually reached out to me privately, said she's been applying to jobs in another state and talking about getting a fresh start. I don't know if it's true, but if it is, I hope she gets it. I mean that sincerely. Maybe distance will force her to grow up a little. Maybe she'll even learn that actions have consequences, especially when you treat people like props in your own drama. As for me, I'm doing better. I'm not entirely healed from the stress, but I feel steadier now. Grounded. Like I've finally stepped off the roller coaster. Emily might always be someone who talks about me behind my back, twisting the story to make herself the tragic heroine, but I'm done caring. The people who matter know the truth. And I've kept every screenshot and message just in case. Update 5. So, here we are. It's been almost a month since the last update, and I can finally say with certainty that things have calmed down. Emily hasn't reached out. No surprise lawsuits, no more passive-aggressive posts, and, most importantly, no legal threats. The whole saga, as dramatic as it was, seems to have fizzled out. There's no new drama to keep me on edge, and I feel like I can finally start rebuilding my peace without constantly looking over my shoulder. The apartment still feels like mine again. I'm getting to know my new roommate, Sarah, who's great. She's respectful of my space, and we've already had a few late-night chats about life and random things, which has been a welcome change from the tension-filled days with Emily. I've even been able to get back into my routines, like cooking more, doing yoga, and just enjoying the little things again. It's honestly been a relief. As for Emily, she seems to have genuinely moved on, at least from what I can tell. I saw on social media that she's in a new relationship, and honestly, I'm not interested in digging any deeper. Whatever happened between us is in the past. I don't hold grudges, but I've learned that sometimes, you just need to let go and move forward without getting bogged down in petty conflicts. Thank you all for the support and advice. It really helped me keep my sanity during some of the more confusing and stressful parts of this experience. I never expected things to get this out of hand, but here we are, and I'm better for it. Hopefully, I've learned a thing or two about setting boundaries and handling situations with a little more maturity in the future. And for anyone dealing with a similar situation, my advice is simple: stand your ground, trust your instincts, and don't let anyone make you feel like your feelings and boundaries aren't valid. It's not worth letting someone else's drama control your life. What do you think? Tell us in the comments. Like the video and hit the subscribe button for more Reddit stories.